Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan, and this is the 52-week challenge. A couple weeks behind, so I'm gonna just catch us up, or catch myself up as to where I should be in this video. I think I'm just looking down at my notes. I was supposed to. I've been missing since about week 3. So I'm going to talk about implicit bias and the results from the test that I took, and then start talking about the 4 eyes of oppression and their connection to racism. Talk about institutions, ideologies, and also like interpersonal experiences I've had with those eyes of oppression. So when it comes to the implicit bias test, I took it a while back, and I've told some people this story about how when I took it once, I'll be real, I was at a party with some friends, and I had just gone to bed, and it was after 1 o'clock in the morning, and I had had a couple beers. And I was like, I was laying down in bed, and I jumped on Facebook just to kind of, check it one last time before I went to sleep, and I saw Will's video, but more so saw the link, and so I clicked on the link and went and took the test. And it wasn't the first time I had taken that test. I took it another time before when I was in graduate school. I took it my first year in my social work program. And I remember back then thinking like, oh, like I am this wonderful white person. Like I love people of color. I'm gonna do so well on this. It's gonna show me that like I'm so great and that I don't have any bias, or that if I do, it's towards people of color, and like that I'm not like inherently racist and all these wonderful things. And as you can imagine, I took the test and was very shocked at my results, that I somehow possibly had preconceived notions and implicit bias towards people of color. And I don't know how that happened, because I grew up surrounded by all white people. I went to college surrounded by all white people, and I had only once lived in a community where I was like in the minority, where I was one of the only white folks there, and that was just the year before I started graduate school. So, since then, since coming to that realization at that time, I was like, okay, like there's a lot more work I need to do here. So when I took this test again, I wish I had saved the results from back then so I could see if I've been doing the work since then to shift this. But taking that test late at night, after having a couple of drinks, so naturally your reaction time's a little lower and that kind of stuff. My results were that I had a moderate preference for white people compared to people of color. Like that my like implicit bias was like more positive towards white folks, and less positive or negative towards people of color. And when I first looked at that, I was like, well, my reaction time was slower, and so those results don't really mean anything. But when I thought about it more so the next day, I was like, no, like I could have very well had slower reaction time going the other way, when it was from like when you have to put the white on bad and black on good. My reaction time could have been slower that way, but it wasn't. It was very like positively correlated towards white good, black bad. And so then when I took it again later in the day, it was maybe at like 8 o'clock at night, so I got no preference one way or the other. And so I think when I wrestle with those results, it's like when I am not in my best self, when I am tired, when I am when I wouldn't say I was drunk, but like if I've had if I'm under the influence of a substance, it's like where does my brain like naturally go then? And to see that that's what's in there was just like very very telling for me. That even then, like even when you're trying to relax or have fun or whatever, like this monster can still come out of you, and it'll come out when you're not prepared, when you're quote unquote not in your best self. And so how do you control things in that state of mind? I think it's just like something to even like have a conversation around and be mindful of. Like I know some of the games I play with those friends that I was hanging out with, we play like Cards Against Humanity, and that like I notice that if I don't drink and I play that game, like it's not funny. I think it's gross. I think it's not something I find entertaining or fun. yeah, or like I can't really even laugh at it, but I know that if I have a couple drinks, I'm like, oh, like isn't that hilarious? This horrible racist, or sexist, or just like gross thing that we made, a gross like joke that we made, and so if you hear like clip clopping around, that's this one. Where is she? She's gonna walk around in this video on the floor, so we'll probably hear her here and there. So sorry about that if it's distracting. Um, but yeah, so about Cards Against Humanity, like this stuff isn't funny. Like, but why is it that we play these games? And I look most of the time, and I'm surrounded by my white friends when we play this game. So she's mad that I'm not talking to her. So yeah, I think that's another thing to think about. Like, why is this a form of entertainment for us? So it's connected to all those biases. So that's week 3. Week 4 is a video about like ideological, like with four eyes of oppression, and this one's the ideological connection to racism. And so the ideology that I wrestle with really often and see my own connection to it, like as a white person in this world, and how it connects to white supremacy culture, is this idea that like if you're white, then you're all right, or if you're white, then you should be all right. And so it's this idea that like that white folks are good, that we've got it all together, and then like the other hand of that is that like people of color are bad, and so we've got to lock them up. We've got to do all the things that we've got to do. But for me, like the connection that this has to me, and where I see like this ideology killing me and hurting me and my family, and like why I am motivated to do something about it, because I see like actually what it does to me, is this like the second part of this idea that like if you're white, then you should be all right. And a lot of this is connected like to whiteness, white supremacy culture, but also like patriarchy and capitalism. And these ideas that like as a white man in particular, like I need to have it all together. I need to provide for my family. I need to take care of myself. I need to have a good job. I need to make enough money. I need to like not ask for help. I need to just like I need to have it all together. And if I don't, if for some reason like I'm struggling, or if I'm behind, or if I have questions, or I don't know something, like then there's something wrong with me. That there's something like inherently wrong. There's something, there's a mistake that I've made along the way, and like I myself am to blame for that. And what that does, at least for me, is that it brings with it a lot of like shame and guilt and doubt, a lot of like internalized frustration, and I watch how there are times when I then take that out on my family. Like I don't get physically violent or anything like that. That's just not in my DNA. But I know that I'll withdraw. I won't be as honest or as open with my wife or with my community. I won't ask for help, and that then like what does that continue to do to me? That like self-perpetuating cycle of like withdrawal, and then like this frustration and anger that then I wrestle with, because I somehow feel that I am not enough because I don't make enough money, or if I yeah, like a lot of it sometimes gets connected to money for me. And particularly, I wrestled with this when I was working like 3 jobs. I had my internship, I was working at a restaurant, I was working at a summer camp, and I was like living paycheck to paycheck. And for the most part, like I didn't have a car payment, I didn't have like this like a lot of stuff that I have now. But I had to buy gas and groceries, and just like take care of myself and be able to live, and like take care of like get an oil change and fix my air conditioner and like all this kind of stuff for my old car. And I remember like sitting in my driveway one day. I had just gotten home from work. It's the middle of the summer. My air conditioner's broken in the car, and I was just like I was exhausted and I was miserable, and I felt like nothing I ever did was gonna fix this. I had my bachelor's degree at the time, and I was like, what in the world am I doing wrong? Like I should have it together by now. My friends have cars. One of my friends has an apartment. Like, yeah, I looked at, and they have real jobs, and they have this and that, and I'm like, here I am, as still an intern, still trying to make money with all these different jobs, working at this restaurant. I'm so miserable. like I'm never gonna be where my friends are. And it's because there's something wrong with me, because I made the wrong choices, because I picked a dumb major. I shouldn't have done a year of service in between undergrad and graduate school. I picked social work of all programs because like that's gonna make me a heck of a lot of money. It's like all this doubt and guilt and shame because like here I am in the world and I'm struggling, and not like looking at the fact that like I'm working an unpaid internship where I'm dedicating, I think it was like 24 or 15 hours of my time per week, 16 hours of my time per week. I'm working two minimum wage jobs, and like minimum wage, as anybody knows, is like grossly inadequate to like the actual cost of living. And like these systems are actually like keeping me poor, keeping me struggling, keeping me like to forcing me to work like I was also walking a dog at the time. There's so much that I was doing, and like the system was designed to keep me there. And if I wasn't in school, if I wasn't able to get my master's and like then have this internship that led me to the job that I'm in now, I don't know where I would be. I don't know if I'd be able to find a job that correlated to my political science and international studies degree. But like, even if I didn't have that degree, then where would I be? And so like, that's my wrestle there with this ideology, right? I'm getting into like the systems and the structure now, but like the ideology forces you to look at yourself and to blame yourself instead of and for me as a white person in particular, instead of look up at the system that is keeping us all like oppressed and poor and struggling and hustling, um, after this quest to make myself the most wealthy person I can be. And so that's a force that I still struggle with, this idea that if you're white, you're all right, and if you're not, then there's something wrong with you. So this kind of connects as well to the second eye of oppression that I want to talk about, which is the institutional. And so the institution I want to focus on here is the education system, right? Like public education, higher education, all that kind of stuff, because of my connection to that. I just was able to graduate this past August with my master's. So I've been and so I'm 26. I'm 26. So I've been in school for like my entire life, for 20 years, right? From the time I was 6 to the time I turned 26. And this system I was taught for the longest time is like the silver bullet, right? Like if you just get a good education, if you just go and you graduate from high school, and then all of a sudden you got to go to college and graduate from college, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, actually you have to graduate with a master's degree so you can get a job. Like if you just do all of these things, then within this system, then you'll be successful and you'll be all right. And for people who look like me, for like white folks, well, yeah, of course, like the system was built for us. It was built by us. It was built for us. And one of like the lies that we've been taught is around this idea of Brown versus Board of Education. And in school, I was taught, growing up, that this narrative that these schools before desegregation, these like black run schools for like African American or like students of color, that they were dilapidated and they were run down and they didn't have any heat, and they didn't have enough books, and they didn't have this and they didn't have that. But these white schools over here were like the promised land. They had everything. They had enough books, and they had enough desks to go around for people to each have their own desk, and they had heat, and they had running water, and they had indoor plumbing, and like they had all this stuff that these other schools didn't have. And so, like us as white saviors, we had to open our doors to let like the students of color in and to come to school over here. And what I learned when I was in my second year of grad school, it was over the summer before I was going into my second year. What I learned actually was that these schools, that like the Brown versus Board of Education wasn't this like fairy tale. It was like there was a young girl whose parents wanted to send her to a school that was closer, which happened to be like a white run school. And like the school board said, no, you can't come here. And then so they took the case to the court, and it got all the way up to the Supreme Court. And There was no way that we were going to have, like, we as the United States or as America, were going to have this national narrative that we were letting people of color choose where they were going to send their kids to school. We had to make it as if, like, they had no choice. And we, as, like, great, well-meaning white folks, were going to, like, say, okay, like, you can come to school over here. We'll give you what it is that you can't provide for your own community. When in reality, many of these black-run schools were, like, tremendously successful, and they had, enough black, like, or like teachers of color and administrations of color and all this kind of stuff. But when we desegregated these systems and forced students of color into the classroom with white students, like the teachers of color and the administrators of color and the superintendents and all these other like people of color who had positions within these institutions, they weren't allowed in. The students could come in, but the teachers couldn't get jobs anywhere. So now we've got this new system of like students of color forced into these white-run schools with white-made rules that were designed for the advancement of white people that like have no room or no understanding of students of color. And now like that institution is used to funnel like students into the workforce. And if you can't fit yourself within that system, if you can't twist and contort yourself to fit in that system, then they funnel you right into prison. They suspend you, they expel you, they put you in detention, and they stick you into prison. And for the most part, it's predominantly students of color and young black boys in particular that get pegged from the very second they come into kindergarten to say, oh, like that one's a troublemaker. And now when we see, this might be getting a little too much into the analysis, but it's like now we see like young black boys come into school who like can't sit still because no young boys can sit still and some young girls can't sit still and just kids like want to get up and run and move. But like the idea and how we educate like through like white supremacy and through whiteness and patriarchy is that like you sit down and you listen, and I stand at the front of the classroom and I tell you what it is that you need to know. And if you can't handle that, then you can't be here. You either need to take like this going to agitate some folks. You either need to take a pill for some ADHD or ADD, and some folks really have that as a diagnosis, don't get me wrong, and some people need medical help. Like that I don't disagree with, but there is like an over prescribing problem that we have because we're trying to control people and trying to make little black boys like not as active and like as God intended them to be, because we as white folks can't control them. And so when that doesn't work, or if somebody doesn't want to choose that method, then it's detention, it's suspension, it's expulsion, it's prison. And so for me, what like the connection I have to this system is like I spent my whole entire life in it, and I grew up with the belief that if somebody could just have what I had, access to this kind of an education where I can have my master's degree by the time of 26, like completely ignoring the mountain of student loan debt that I have under my name right now.